Ooh, what's anime? I'm back. The Seed. The Seed. Um, so I watched both movies that I intended on and put in the community section. There's already a video out about Beach House. Um, this one's kind of different, but kind of not. Um, they both are having to do with invasions. Um, this one I included because of there being a black goo element, a black goo element to the plot. Um, it's kind of harder to be able to definitively say what the role of this black goo is in this one, but the overall, kind of theme of the movie, I feel like makes a lot more sense for how an invasion would look. And you can draw delineations to, what I feel like we're already kind of seeing. And when I say invasion, that doesn't necessarily mean aliens. I think that whole concept is kind of more of a thought form. More of like, honestly, kind of seems like I hate to say it. This is it's such a buzzword, but it's happening a lot right now. So you're gonna hear the word a lot. Psyop. It kind of seems like a psyop, and a long running one at that. I've talked about in recent videos. I think it might have been the 1902 video, or maybe one that came after that. But for instance, the 1947 crash, I think that is the 1902 video. The 1947 crash seemed more like bestowing technologies and materials to us than, just a happenstance situation where some shit crashed and it didn't blow up and it was still intact enough to reverse engineer. You feel what I'm saying? Like, has anyone thought that through? Has anyone made any sense of that? It just so happened to crash in such a way that it preserved everything. No. You know what I mean? So anyway, the Seed is... It starts off a little hammy. I'll go ahead and toss that out to you. There's a specific character that really got on my fucking nerves. But I think she was supposed to. There's some people like, especially within horror movies and the genre, there are some people that like the idea of campy stuff. If you're not familiar with that, it just means corny, cheesy, intentionally overzealous with with the awkwardness, or like I said, the corniness, whatever it might be. But it's not the entire movie, it's just this character. So call that what you may. You can almost look at it as like a comic relief. But I felt like she's not a bad actress. I feel like she could have done differently. So it's probably the director. Anyway, the concept of this movie, rather than dealing with a situation where you see a bunch of shit hanging around in the sky, and you have all this warning, and you have sounds, and all of these things that build up to some kind of like very, very localized face-off between Will Smith, usually, and whatever, dude. It's much more realistic. It starts off campy, but if you make it through that, it makes, it's very creepy. These three girls are on like a trip, little vacation. They're at one of the chicks' dad's like very, very nice house in the desert, and they're there to watch a once in a lifetime meteor shower. Right? So, the meteor shower comes, and they notice that it looks very specific. They're like, they keep saying, is it supposed to look like that? And they make a point. Again, I keep forgetting to fucking do this. If you don't want to hear this shit before you watch the movie, go watch the movie now and come back. Because I'm not just going to talk about the movie's like plot points. I'm going to make delineations between stuff that we're seeing now in reality now and the movie. So if you want to see the movie and you care about spoilers, go watch it. Anyway, they notice as these meteors are falling, that it looks a specific way, in a way that they weren't expecting it to. And I get the sense that what they mean is they kind of, expected a specific thing, even if they hadn't seen a meteor shower. Two of them had not seen it before. One of them had seen a meteor shower before. So, for her to say, is it supposed to look like that, or something to that effect, I think she might have said something different. Or if she did, it doesn't make sense. But there was something special about it. And the reason that you know that as the viewer is they push in on the eyes and it shows the meteors coming down. Almost like it's hypnotizing them. Or mystifying them, mesmerizing them. And the next morning, they have something, or is it the next morning? At some point, either that night or the next morning, something falls into the pool, and it's obviously very hot because it's bubbling. They get it out. Actually, it's that night. It's the same night. They get it out of the pool, and they just sit it there, and it's very, black, oily, kind of looks like a rock, but then they start to notice that it has a face. They notice it has a little face. They didn't seem very worried about that. That was weird to me. Again, horror movies, you just kind of have to let them be stupid, because that's, I guess, the way that they push the plot. I have a goal to make a horror movie where no one has to look stupid. You just can't avoid what happened. You're not dumb. You just couldn't do shit about it. Anyway, so they notice it has a face. They're high. They're partying and stuff. So they're like, we're going to all go to bed. Next day they get up. Where the thing was, it is no longer there. There's a trail of, again, black substance, viscous. It's black goo. Obviously, it's black goo. Thing was covered in black goo, and it had a hard shell. It looked like it was encased, almost like encased in cacao. If I had to, draw a correlation between that and something else. But it had dragged itself into the yard and stopped, and it was no longer in this ball shape, curled up. It was now kind of sprawled out, face down in the yard. Anyway, the movie goes along. They try to get someone to get rid of it because it smells. It smells like sulfur. They say, bad eggs, that's sulfur, which I find interesting. Because that means a very specific chemical makeup. They try to get someone to get rid of it. He hits it with a shovel. It screams, and it has glowing eyes. He runs, smart kid. And one of the main characters, works at an animal hospital, or a pet shop. No, a pet shop. And so she's an idiot in a different way, where it's she's so ridiculously hipster granola that she, can't take the idea of it hurting or whatever. And I don't want anything with a life to hurt either, but you have to be aware of nefarious beings. That's just the nature of shit in the existence that we're currently in, right? Anyway, she brings it in the house at some point. I'm trying to go as quickly as possible. I know you don't. You're going to watch the movie maybe, or maybe you don't. She brings it in the house. Slowly but surely, you start to notice that this thing has abilities. It can change its mass, meaning that it can make itself light enough for you to carry if it wants to. It can make itself weigh a ton, the size of a car if it wants to. It doesn't change shape, just changes its mass. It also has some kind of mesmeric effect, mesmerizing, effect, with its eyes. Again, they glow. And slowly but surely, you know, it kind of flips, and the chick who's the one that brought it in the house and stuff, the kind of PETA chick, you know, she's not really mesmerized. She just did that because she's a dummy. She's a you know, a cat lady or something. The other two, though, one of them gets mesmerized first. I'll say this. I'll give another preface because this is kind of gross. This is, I think, inspired by a movie in 1989 of a similar title, called The Invasion Seed, or The Seed Invasion or something like that, with the dude from Chips. Anyway, essentially what happens is this thing, its sexual organ is completely different from what we're used to, from any organism that's on this planet. It gets this chick to bring it to her room, put it in her bed, and it has this effect where it can kind of, I don't know what to call this, man. It can get into your brain and show you things, or it can get into your brain and kind of hypnotically get you to do something. Not foolproof, but pretty much foolproof. I have a theory that if you're not a moron, you could probably, you know, break free. Also, it seems like you have to be a woman, which is also interesting because it seems to be a male. But its genitalia, let me try to be clinical with this shit. Its genitalia is big enough for multiple women to fit into. I'll say it like that. And as it's within this thing, they're in a hypnagogic state. So it's entrancing them, putting them in a hypnagogic state. And so they're seeing a completely different scene than what they're in the room that they're actually in, right? And essentially it seems like there's multiple of these things that kind of like drop to the surface of the planet and essentially have to like find a way to mate with Earth's women, right? And not, you know, not the good old-fashioned way. It basically tricks them, hypnotizes them into doing it, and once they do this once, they're, for all intents and purposes, they're addicted to it. As a matter of fact, one of them says that she feels great. She feels better than she's felt in so long, and she feels like she can do anything. So there's some kind of seemingly like a drug effect happening. And soon after that, you realize that there is literally something in them, this black goo stuff. As they're arguing over whether or not to keep this thing, you know, they're kind of feigning like they're trying to keep it for money, but really they're addicted to it. They're in love with it. Hormones, I'm guessing, and the black goo that's inside of them. And as they're arguing, they pretty instantaneously form a baby bump, like a 9-month baby bump, and just start pouring black goo out of their faces. Eyes, nose, mouth, start vomiting black goo. And throughout the movie, they try to, their phones break, and they try to go to a neighbor's house. And the neighbor is like a sciencey type person who, for some reason, has been studying this specific thing and has like the date that they're going to show up drawn like a perfect sketch of what they look like. They didn't explain that. It's, you know, not as good as Beach House, I'll say that. Not as well written. I still like the movie a lot, but that didn't make any sense. But, you know, that neighbor killed themselves, like shot themselves when it got close to the day. And so they had a good idea of what was happening. And I won't go through more details, but the last thing I'll say is, as the movie is ending, you see another meteor shower. And so it's just waves of these things showing up here. They're not hovering in the sky. They're not sending a signal. They're not making, black mist or fog clouds or symbols trying to communicate. They don't do any of that. They just show up and get cracking. Right? The black goo, though, what I found interesting in this one is that this is another situation where rather than fighting you, because up until a certain point, a lot of these alien invasion movies and things of the like, they always made it seem like you would be on square ground, like you would go toe to toe with these things and somehow you could persist and be victorious. That is fucking retarded. That is not what would happen in that situation in most scenarios. Just saying, if something is realm faring like that, meaning it's going to different realms and attempting to decimate, it's very likely that it's going to be using, tactics of espionage and, secrecy and mind control, neurology, like brain chemicals, things of this nature where, you're not really going to know what's happening until it's probably too late to do anything about it. And the thing I did like was that one of them was almost impervious because it did try. It got her in the room. She locked eyes with it. It did the thing. She started taking her clothes off. As soon as it touched her neck with the little tendril things that are on its junk. Because the thing comes out like a net. Anyway, watch the movie. I'm not going to explain that part. But as soon as it touched her, she was like, what the fuck, and got up out of there. And so she's the main protagonist, not antagonist. She's the main protagonist. I think that is very likely. I think that there are some that are much more resilient and much more, resistant to these things, whether it be fully, mind and body, or just mind. Because, I think that the processes that the avatar goes through are very automatic. And so it's very likely that the body could be, affected, but the mind may be able to persist and not see some of the degradation that other beings may see. And these are the kind of things toward the end of what I'm saying. These things that I'm saying, those are the delineations that I made, where it's like, whether what we're seeing or is organic or not, or whether it is some kind of invasion or not, because like I said, those patents, I posted them to show that they are acknowledged, not to say that I believe that the government actually developed these things or had a hand in creating them. It's a disclosure. It's an acknowledgement of existence. Who made that, or how it came to be, or how it came to be here specifically, I don't know. But it's very recent from my experience, because, again, I've lived in the South for a very long section of my life, and when I didn't, I was just traveling around. Never heard of any of the stuff that those, specifically the swarm shit, or the, kind of fake flies you can't see without, you can. I've got pictures of them. They're not so small that you can't see, but when they fly, you're not seeing them. You may see something peripherally, or if you're looking at a white backdrop, you may see something kind of quickly go by, but very fast, very hard to kill, very resilient, and it's yet to be seen if they are connected directly to the anthrobot stuff, the self-replicating, structure-creating, fruiting body creating things that seem to be in some way connected. Could be the same thing. Might just be carriers. Bill Gates has that project where he worked on the genetically modified mosquitoes to me, it's not cost efficient to only work on one thing. So it makes perfect sense to me that these could have also come from there, as well as what they carry. Who knows? Who knows? That's all conjecture. But what I will say, what is not conjecture, is their existence. They talk about it. They have patents for it. They admit it. I have pictures of, of samples of my own. The black goo thing, I think, is a representation of the capability to manipulate the neurological functions of humans. That's essentially what I'm saying. And also other things. It seems like it could also do other things, but the reality of it is, this is something that's repeated cyclically, like in a cyclical fashion. I think that the concept of fiction, it hasn't always existed, for one. Fiction is not something that's always existed. That title, I don't want to call it a genre. I guess it is a genre in a way. That genre is fairly recent. If you go back past a certain year and say something about fiction, you're not really going to get, they're not going to understand what you mean. They had heroes' journeys and things like that, but these were myth. They weren't fiction, they were myth. And so many truly believed in them, whether they thought that it was somewhat allegorical or what. These were beings that truly existed in their eyes, and many times in my eyes too. That's up for debate with a lot of other researchers and whatnot, but I tend to think that there was at least one being that is a representation of many different stories, much like the Jesus archetype comes from other. Dionysus is Jesus. OG Jesus is a recreation of Dionysus. So and that goes on and on and on. Also, I've got a video talking about my theory as to what all these gods are, all these gods from all these mythologies. It's called Documentation of Rough Progress. It's in that playlist. Should be the first one. Should be the first video. That's one of my best as far as explaining my theories goes. All this shit ties in together because I believe that these technologies and these things that are explained in these myths, in these old wives' tales and stories, I think that we're told over and over again, oh, that's just a story, or that's just imagination, or that's just fiction. But there's something to those stories. Not to say that they haven't been blown out of proportion, or the telephone game changes the overall framework, but they're still based in something. Much like a lot of researchers are starting to come around to the fact that, for instance, aliens used to be referred to as the little people by the Irish and the Scottish, that area. The fairies, not a new thing at all the way down to what they look like. These things just get recreated either by entities such as governments, agencies and shit like that, or just by the culture itself as time goes along, as moments pass, rather. These things continue to look about the same, but what they're called and how they behave can change a little bit, or it can change drastically. And it's no different with the black goo. This isn't a new thing. When you go back far enough, when I was a kid, there was a movie that was old already called The Blob. That's an iteration of black goo. Original Ghostbusters, I like to use that one as an example because it wasn't black, it was pink, but it acted just as black goo acts. Reacted to frequency, very, very malicious and bloodthirsty and so forth. Had some metaphysical properties to it. Even on down to zombies, old zombie movies, the fact that it takes over the brain and uses humans as tools You know, that's an aspect of black goo. And this is no different. This seed movie, by the end of it, these two girls that were impregnated by the invader, they were putting on a show. They weren't even themselves anymore. They could act like themselves, but only because the symbiote had them. So it could access their personality, it could access their memories, but it wasn't them anymore. So it acted like them, but it wasn't them anymore. And by this point, they're pretty much to term. I don't think it needed much time to gestate, meaning they were about to give birth to whatever it, it gave them. And they were trying to go out and spread this. So they're not just like running away from the third friend who's the protagonist, because she's realized at this point what's happening. She's trying to kill him, get rid of him, to help save the planet, or so she thinks. But by this point, they're trying to get away. They're trying to get out of the vicinity so that they can, bring these things forth and perpetuate a cycle. Because I'm imagining, once they are able to bring to term, that thing will probably grow very quickly and do the exact same shit. And as I said, at the end of the movie, the last scene, I think, is you just see more meteors. And you're supposed to make the connection. You've watched this whole drama unfold, this whole thriller unfold, and that was just one house. That was just one house, one situation, and there are hundreds of these meteors dropping to the earth. I like movies like that. They are scary to consider. They don't scare me like, in a literal sense, but they're just as creepy as they are thought-provoking. Because that's something that, unless we all choose to, literally all of us choose to get together and kind of show our might, it doesn't matter what happens, whether it's the stuff I talk about or the one world government, kind of truth seekers, their thing. There's all kinds of different lanes to this shit, but it doesn't matter which ones sound like nonsense to you or which ones seem more believable. It doesn't matter, because we're so fragmented from each other. And some of that's not even our fault. It's very much intentional. By design, I'll say. Yeah, by design. But if we made a concerted effort together to try to make that shit work, it would be much more difficult to keep us apart. And I do believe that if we were to do that, we would be much stronger than you even can know. That concept is why I'm going to be watching Hancock. I'm going to be watching Hancock. That is a shift from Black Goo, but I want to show the correlation between those that have the spark, the breath of life, true consciousness, God consciousness, whatever you want to call it, Christ consciousness, Luciferian energy, whatever you want to call it. Same thing. It's all the same thing. Don't get hung up on titles. Lucifer is not in the Bible, not a real being. It's an energy. It's a different thing. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to be watching Hancock because I want to show, I'm not going to say it here, obviously, but it'll be coming out soon. And I'll explain the theme in that movie that I think is potentially very real, and I'll explain why in that next video too. I'll also like to preface the Black Goo specific stuff, not the whole encompassing thing of all of it, or the anthrobotic stuff that can be proven. The Black Goo stuff is standalone, because there is an organic Black Goo that's made naturally through a very, very specific process. And then there's a synthetic, not synthetic, there's a man-made, man-synthesized version of it through filtration, hyperfiltration of water. That essentially just gives you, monatomic gold and colloidal silver, things like, kind of like shilajit. It doesn't, it's not magnetized. It doesn't think, it's not sentient or anything, and they sell it for people to eat. I wouldn't do that because they could just as well send you the other kind if it does happen to exist. And then you're just eating sentient, disagreeable black goo, just putting it in your body. So the stuff that's raining from the sky, potentially, you could just be shoveling that in your face, like the pure, the uncut, straight from Mexico type shit. Colombia. Yeah. I will preface though. Damn, I digressed hard. I'll preface in saying that the disagreeable black goose stories and interpretations and shit, I convey them, but I don't venerate them or give them too much energy because there is no real evidence that has been provided. Just the kind of testimony of Harold Kotz, whose work I do give a lot of credit to. It's helped me greatly. But within that, I'm still a researcher. So until you show your work, it's theory and conjecture, You're just kind of blowing your horn until you actually, show those things. And so I would advise the same. It's decent to know about because there is a potential. The other shit's real, so there's a potentiality that it's all real, or it could be some psyop shit where two truths and a lie. Who knows? I'm gonna keep looking into it. This isn't the entirety of what my channel is or anything like that. This is just a series that I'm doing. I may keep doing it. I may just do it until I feel like I've done enough. We'll see. But I'm also going to be doing regular videos too. In fact, right before this, I was doing some studying on Zoroastrianism. So, who knows what will come next as far as that shit goes. But next, I think, for the movie shit's going to be Hancock. Anyway, I love you, and I appreciate you hearing me out, and I will see you later, dog. I'll let you, bye, dog.